Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business on Canada's podcast network. Joining me today is Don Kottick, who is president and CEO of Sotheby's International Realty Canada. Thanks for joining us again today, Don.
Oh, Mario, thanks for having me. Great to back. Great to
Uh,
see you again.
all right, wonderful. Let's talk about the luxury real estate market in Canada. How would you describe what 2022 was like in that market?
Well, it's interesting. There's been a lot of talk in the media about what's been going on in the market, but to be honest with you, it's no surprise where we find ourselves today. We're coming off really, 2021, 2020. We're two record-setting years, right? We're going at a pace that, really wasn't sustainable. So, it was inevitable that things had to, basically adjust. And we saw that adjustment happen in 2022. We saw it happen earlier in Vancouver relative to other areas. Most of the other pockets tended to, or major centers had their adjustment at the end of Q2. The only kind of outlier was Alberta. And, Alberta tended to, have a life of its own. But it's perfectly understandable that after 2 years of record-setting pace, that we would actually have a really, really what is called a return to normalization in the marketplace, and that's where we find ourselves today.
Okay, and when you look at the activity in 2022, tell me a little bit about where prices went in the luxury market.
Well, once again, we're coming off, a record-setting 2 years. So obviously there had to be a price adjustment. We saw an adjustment in terms of the unit activity in each of the markets, and really, as I said, it was really just more of a return to normalization. And one of the things that you have to put this into context is Canada has historically and continues to have a chronic undersupply of homes relative to our population. So
Yeah.
you have that. You can never forget that. Inventory is critical to everything, and it will be for years because it'll take us years to ever get ourselves out of this decades-long chronic shortage of supply. But that said, we still have a lot of buyers in the market. There's even as we go into 2023, there's a lot of buyers that want to participate in the market, want to come into the market. And, from my perspective, I believe they're waiting for interest rates to finally cap out.
Yeah.
And the Bank of Canada, has been fighting inflation. They've been obviously struggling with, the federal government's continual lack of fiscal responsibility and the overspending that's been going on in terms of the government. And so the Bank of Canada is like really struggling with how do we get inflation under control? But we went through 7 or 8 increases in the last little while. And the general consensus is as we approach the end of January, we're hopefully seeing the last of those rate increases. And there's speculation it could be 25 basis points, it could be 50 basis points. And I think the market, the buyers are waiting to see when that is really, capped out. Once that's capped out, I believe the market will pick up again.
Yeah. Now, when you look at those interest rates, Don, the impact on the consumer, is it less at this level, at the high end, the top tier real estate market, as opposed to, say, the lack of a better word, normal, average market in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, it'll kind of break the market. You have your first time buyers. They're hit the hardest by any
Yeah.
kind of rate increases. There's talk about them tightening mortgage rules again in the next 4 months. They're gonna be under, probably more pressure to buy before these rates come in. And then you have really what we call the conventional market. Then you have the luxury market, and then you have the ultra luxury market. And I think the best way to kind of visualize this is when you get to the luxury space and the ultra luxury space, those particular participants in those two categories are less impacted by rate increases. They tend to have either the cash or they tend to have the assets where they can move around. So their decisions aren't driven, as they are so much in the conventional and the first time buyer segment of the market.
Yeah, interesting. Also, I just want to go back to, you talk about the supply issue. Now, when you look at the supply, by segment and the categories, what is the ultra luxury and what is the luxury market look like when it comes to supply compared to, say, regular supply?
Yeah, I mean, it's a smaller segment of the market. Obviously, if they're going to be adding inventory to the market, they're less likely to add it in the luxury, the ultra luxury space. But that said, a lot of developers, understand that this is an area where, maybe the margins might be a little larger. So you might see some developments in the luxury, the ultra luxury space. But yeah, the inventory will tend to be added at the conventional and the first time buyer, and then the we won't see as many additions to the ultra luxury space.
Anything else that strikes you, Don, about what happened in 2022 and what to look forward to in 2023?
Yeah, the only thing we haven't talked about is really immigration, right? Last year we were kind of surprised when the federal government announced that 750,000 had come to Canada last year. There's talk about them adding another 1.5 million new immigrants over the next number of years. So this is, once again, contrary to kind of the government policies, is going to put more pressure on affordability. It's going to put more pressure on the housing market, and it really kind of expedites the need that we need to add inventory. We need to remove the bureaucracy at all levels of government. We need to start building homes if we're continuing to bring in this many people into the country. We've also seen
Yeah.
we've seen expats from Asia, from Hong Kong, start to come back into Canada. We're seeing that in Vancouver. We're starting to see it in Vancouver Island, and even in Toronto, we're starting to see some of the expats coming back. So immigration is definitely something that is playing a role in our marketplace, and something that's needs to be considered. Now, the government brought in a ban for 2 years on foreign buyers.
Yeah.
Now, this is probably going to have a negligible effect, because traditionally only 2 to 3% of the market is foreigners that are coming into the marketplace. Unfortunately, this type of policy from a welcoming country such as Canada has created a lot of confusion, because they're saying, well, this doesn't reflect Canadian values. Like, why is Canada putting this restriction when you've always welcomed, immigrants? So there's some confusion in terms of, why the government did this, especially in light of the fact that it'll have negligible impact on the market. But at the end of the day, I just to summarize, I'm optimistic about the spring market. I think once the consumers realize that rates have capped out, I think we'll start to see market activity picked up in all segments, and that includes the luxury, ultra luxury space. And so we're actually looking forward to a good 2023.
Well, let me just ask you a little bit more on the foreign stuff, because I think there's a lot of confusion out there about that. And um uh does that, I understand that it's probably like the Vancouvers and Torontos of the world where they want to have the ban in place, but does that also include the Canmores, the Banffs, the Whistlers, those resort areas as well?
What they've done is they've done it by consensus area. So you actually have to look at the area that you're wanting to move to, make sure there isn't a restriction in that particular area. And I think it's really important that the realtors help you determine whether there is a restriction. There are certain types of properties you can buy. There are certain types of properties you can't buy. There's certain ways that you can buy properties. Even it just has to fit into different categories. And once again, it was we just recently got some of the information. So it's something that needs to be, your realtor really needs to help you, go through and make sure that there's no issues with you buying into a particular real estate class.
Yeah. Have you, have you come across any issues yet on that from your realtors that they've had a buyer and then oops, nope, you can't buy this property?
No, but we've had a few times where our realtors have engaged lawyers just to make sure that,
Okay.
all the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed. Just once again, because of the complexity and the variations and the confusion around that whole piece of legislation. So we've have reached out to some legal advice in a few situations to help us navigate.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thanks, Don, for taking the time.
My pleasure, Mario. Always great to see you. Happy New Year.
You
Great.
too.
Look
All
forward to
right.
seeing you soon.
Oh, you bet. That was Don Kottick, who is president and CEO of Sotheby's International Realty Canada. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business on Canada's Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us today.